Our list of items looks good, but we still need to add some functionality into the checkbox and the delete button. Let's do the checkbox first. Checking the check mark should mark the to-do as done inside of our Firebase data store. So when we check the checkbox and it's checked, we should see done true over here. So first, we're going to hook the checkbox up and make it another controlled form element. Remember, controlled form elements are those that have their values tied directly to this .state. So let's find our checkbox. Here it is inside of list item. And we're going to add an event handler on the element as well as a value property. So we'll say on change, and then we will make up our event handler here. This handle done change. And then we'll set up our value as well. In this case, it's not going to be value, but checked. When I say value, I mean really just the value of the form element. So checked is this .state .done. Then we will implement our handler. So at the bottom, we'll throw in a comma, and we'll say handle done change. Okay. Now let's think about what we want to do inside of this event handler. Whenever a user is checking the checkbox, they're changing, they mean to change the state of the to-do from done false to done true. So we'll say this.setState done is event.target.checked. And then in our function, we'll pass in the obligatory event. Remember, whenever we have a callback on a form element, or really any element, it will always be called with an event object. So we'll say event.target to select the input, and then checked in this case to get whether or not the element is checked. Finally, we need to update our initial state to make sure that we have a state for done. So we'll say done, and we don't want to default done to just being true or false. We want it to be defaulted to whatever the value of this.props.item.done is. So we'll say this.props.item.done. Okay, so let's test this really quick. Just make sure that we're still able to check. Yep, everything looks fine. So what we've done right here is we're setting the local state of our done, of whether or not the to-do is done. It only updates our component. It doesn't actually sync that data over to Firebase. So in order to update our Firebase record, what we'll do is we'll make a new Firebase object and update our record, update our to-do. We'll want every to-do to be able to update itself, so we'll make sure that our new reference is going to be inside of this component will mount. Remember, the last time we made a Firebase reference, it was over in app. We want our list item to be able to update itself from done false to done true, so we'll make a new Firebase reference in here and update our data in here. So let's do component will mount, and this is going to be another function, don't forget the comma. And in this case, we're going to assign our Firebase object to this. So we'll say this.fb is new Firebase. And now here's the interesting part. What do we put in for the URL? Well, we definitely know that we want our same application URL. So the root URL is going to stay the same, right? I'm over here in app. Let's go ahead and copy paste our root URL and paste it at the top. And we know that we're definitely going to want our root URL. So the interesting thing about Firebase is whenever you want to update a single record, you have to provide the absolute record or the absolute URL to that specific record. So in the case of any given to-do, let's look at a to-do that we have. If I want to make modifications to this URL, then my final URL that I need to pass to my Firebase object is going to be our root URL at the top /items/item ID. And then once we create that reference, we can update our record at will. So let's finish off our root URL here. We'll say plus items. We have a slash at the end of this string, so we're gonna remove this one and close with like so. And then finally we're gonna get our ID, which is this.props.item.id. Remember how in the last section I said that when we were putting our list together, we needed access to our ID on the item property, and this is why, so we could get a Firebase reference to it. Let's make sure that we have our require statement for Firebase. So I'm just going to go over to app.jsx and we'll copy our Firebase require, and there we go. Okay, let's talk just one more time. Let's do another once over on how we generated this URL right here. Previously, we made our Firebase reference that we created in app point at root URL/items. And that would return a list of all of our items. In this case, we want our reference to point only at the database entry that represents this particular to-do, the to-do that this list item represents. So to get a reference to this particular ID, we'll append this to-do's ID. Just so we're on the same page here, the final URL that we're going to generate is going to look something like /items/ this string right here. And I don't think I can select it. Oh, well, there we go. So clicking on that item will zero in on this particular record. So this is what our final URL for a single to-do would look like. Now that we've updated our Firebase reference, we'll finish up our event handler and update both our state and our Firebase reference. So we've already done our state. We'll update our Firebase reference as well. So we'll say this.fb update, and this is also going to get done event.target.checked. Forgot semicolon. And we've got some code duplication here, so I'm going to copy paste out just one of them, and we'll say var update is that update, and in each of these we'll say update. Great. So you might be wondering, well, what is this update function right here? Well, since we have a Firebase reference that points at a particular to-do, we can pass in an object, which is update, to the function update. And that will update any data that is sitting at that particular Firebase node. So now we should be able to change our check mark, first we should be able to refresh the page like so, check our checkbox, and hold on for a second there. I know that we have the second item, but bear with me for a second. We should see over here a record change from false to true. But it looks like it's not, so we still have a little bit of troubleshooting to do, and we'll tackle that inside the next section.